All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Paddling Pursuit. We're here with K2N. This is all of us. This is the entire K2N in Hernando. This is our whole squad that agreed to come and be on the show today. So today we wanted to take some time to showcase some of the grassroots approach to starting a club, maintaining a club, and some of the personalities and people that are part of that and make that reality. Many paddlers that listen to the Paddling Pursuit simply paddle alone, right? They don't have a group, they don't have infrastructure, there's no way to go about it, right? So we wanted to shed some light on, how our paddlers have found the club, how they use the club for their own, personal fitness and health, or for, racing dominance at the Chattajack or whatever, right? So thank you all so much for being here. So going across the table, so in the green, which is straight ahead of me, if you're listening on the podcast, that doesn't mean anything. We have Beth Rucker, Colleen Kenney, Gina Pateracki, Christina Norman, and then myself, Robert Norman, around the big round table. So you might hear a slight echo because we have 2 microphones for 5 people spread out over like 10 feet here, right? So please deal with the sound quality. I'll try adjusting it the best that I can. So all of you live here in Citrus County in the middle of freaking nowhere, Florida. So one of the first things that we want to talk about is how did you find K2N to begin with, a little bit of your background, and that first integration into the club, starting with Beth?
Sure. I moved to Citrus County in 2017 after having lived in Jacksonville for quite a while, and I was looking for outdoors and activity. And one of the things I really lost when I left Jacksonville was I ran some, and so I lost my running community. I was here by myself, trying to run by myself. And one day we were looking at what's going on in the county, and we saw that some dude named Robert had a tent set up talking about water sports. And so we decided to go check it out. And as it turns out, it was Robert Norman talking about dragon boating and the sport of dragon boating and doing sup tours and those types of things. And so we went over, we chatted with him. We signed up for a sup tour, you may remember. Then we decided to hop in the dragon boat, and that was in July of 2018. I had never heard of dragon boat. I had never heard of outrigger canoes. I had never heard of surf skis. And then here we are all these years later, having really found a community that I lost with my running community, found the outdoor fitness, the exercise, the being with nature, and it was just a really cool thing to have found and sustained for that period of time. So thank you to you for having a vision of something that could bring us together.
Yep, Beth was one of, I like to call it the, each year when people join, it's like the class up, right? And Beth was class of 2018, which is a pretty, every year that goes on, right? We got less and less of the class of 2018. And when we started the club, I didn't have a team or an idea of what we're going to do with it. It was just, I have a boat and now I got to fill it with people. And so the first group of people, I didn't know, like Beth, right? Just came up, hey, this sounds cool, shows up, does dragon boat one day, helps fill that boat. And we were able to fill it with 20 strangers, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And even my long-term vision back then wasn't oh yeah, and then in 6 years we're going to have all these cool things and we're going to, it was just day by day, right? Number one, we got to fill this boat. Right, advertisement, try to meet people, and get the ball rolling on that. So Beth has been around since almost literally day one, right? Which is super cool. So Colleen, tell us about your integration into K2N.
So I moved to Citrus County in the fall of 2021, and was having some health issues. Actually moved down so I could live next door to family. Bought the house next to my son, and at a certain point in time over the winter into 2022, I was kind of thinking, I need to get up off this couch or I'm going to die. So I started to get out and walk on the trail and be more active. Well, one day, the beginning of April, there was this big festival on the lakefront, and I heard these drums and I saw these cool boats, and I'm like, what is that? Fortunately, I got to see one of Robert's ads on Facebook that were asking for new members, and young and old, all skill levels. And I thought, that looked pretty cool, but I don't know if this is for me. So I sent a private message. Hey, I'm really kind of old and broken, and I don't know if this is a good fit, but there's something about this dragon boat thing that I think I'd really like to try. And being the person that he is and the coach that he is, Robert was like, come on down. And the first time in the boat, I absolutely fell in love with it. And I know that you've talked about people going from dragon boat to the small boats and then they disappear. And I actually really love the dragon boat because it's my physical fitness, my emotional release, kind of. I can get it all out in the boat. And it's also kind of a spiritual experience. Sometimes when we're out there on the lake and the sun is setting and it is just gorgeous, I am just like, oh, thank you so much that I've gotten into this. It's a community and we're kind of a family there and is different and from different backgrounds that we all are. There's a part of it that I love because I came from a team background when I was military and I really miss that and I really needed that community, and K2N filled that for me.
Yep, and that's one of the cool things with the club in general is it's an outreach to like normal people, right? A lot of people, when they imagine creating a club or an organization, they're like, man, I gotta find like superhumans, and they're instantly going to be the thing performance-wise that we're looking for, and there's more to that than just racing and doing well, right? Changing lives, getting people more active, being part of a community, giving people a sense of, having community, right? You have this skill, we all have this skill, we all have this camaraderie from the skill. And again, even when I first got the boat, this was not something that I sat down and envisioned was like, oh yeah, like these are people that aren't going to have these other activities and this will give them a sense of purpose necessarily. It's just like, I like Dragon Boat. I got to fill this boat up, right? And these are some of the positive things that go along with that ideology and trying to do something in a team capacity. So, Gina, tell us how you got roped into this, because I already know how you found the club.
Born and raised in Citrus County, so I didn't move anywhere. But my story is, it's my husband. And he actually saw your K2N on the litter pickup because you adopted a highway, your club, and you give back to the community by picking up. And he Googled you, and when you Google you, K2N, Robert Norman comes up, and he started reading all this stuff. And then he started stalking you on Lake Hernando. He would drive by and see you out there, and he's like, Gina, this guy's the real deal. I'm like, yeah. So he actually went up and talked to you, came home stoked, just so like, you got to meet this guy. He does stand-up paddle. He does it all. He was a record holder, just trying to sell everything he could to me. Well, he drugged me to a practice against my will, and it was Dragon Boat, and it killed me. That first practice, I thought, being arrogant, oh, this is going to be nothing. It killed me. Stroking is hard. I thought for the next 3 days I didn't move, but it lit a spark in me, and I liked it. So hurting, I went back, kept going back, and we have fallen in love with Robert, Christina, the entire group, everything it has to offer, the exercise. I have health problems. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I wear a pump, and I was literally on the couch dying when my husband pulled me to this. And this has breathed new life into me. And we are now owners of our own boats. We own an OC2 because of Robert, an OC1 because of Robert. We competed in Chattajack. We trained in 6 months' time with Robert to do that. And if you're able to find a person like Robert in your community that has a club, I recommend it because it has changed everything in my life for the better.
Yep, and that's one of the things with the paddling pursuit is trying to promote, like, some people don't realize that they're a Robert yet, right? And, like, you don't know, like, a light doesn't shine down on you and, like, nominate you and then sends you a voucher in the mail where you're like, oh, I get to do this. You just have to, like, make it reality, right? And the positivity that comes from it, if your state of mind is right, is excellent, right? Like, that's the main thing that makes the club so special is, giving that feeling and perpetuating it forward. So Ray dropped off Gina and left, and he's not here to defend himself. But I remember my first interaction with Ray was like, I don't know exactly when, but it was a while back. And he showed up, and what reminded me is he came to practice, and he has that Dodge flatbed.
Yes.
And so he came up to me, and I was doing prone when we had gotten this 12-foot prone, and he got done. He asked me a bunch of questions, and they were all like right on the head, like, oh, what is this for, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, some guy knows what a prone paddleboard is in Hernando, and I didn't get his name. He just drove off, right? And then later, he comes back with a sup, like, 8 or almost a year later, it felt like, right? And he's like, hey, I want a sup lesson. I'm like, all right, I'm the guy, right? And so a lot of those interactions you don't put a lot of like thought into, right? Like you meet somebody and you always want to try to approach that with like sending that bird with 2 working wings, right? So if you have a poor interaction with somebody and they leave with a broken wing, right, it doesn't come back. And so my first interaction with Ray, fortunately, was a very good one. Even he didn't quiz me about the club or anything like that. It was just like, he was just seeing like, is this guy laid back? Does he answer questions? Is he nice? And then, a year later, that has, turned into something, awesome, right? So, Christina, what are you doing in the club? Trying to infiltrate it and marry the guy? What's going on?
Yeah. So when I first heard about the club, I heard about it from Facebook, and I think I touched on it in our first episode, but Rebecca had recommended it to me just like on one of those public forums, and I was living in Ocala, and I couldn't point to Citrus County on a map if you paid me money. Like I had been to Rainbow River maybe like once or twice on a kayak.
It's one county away.
Yeah.
it literally touches Marion County. It's one county.
I never said that I was good with directions, but I hadn't heard of Inverness before. I don't know where Lake Hernando is. Like, I'm pretty sure you had to send me like a spot on the map, like show up here. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I'll try it. Why not? And so I started with Dragon Boat. I think I showed up to like maybe 3 or 4 practices before I, was like, okay, well, I want to try out the other one, which was the OC6. And like there weren't all of our small boats in the club at the time, so you had to like reserve your spot in the OC6. It's like a coveted spot. So like it's like, oh, I want to try out the cool boat. And that's really when like it clicked with me, like, oh, I want to do this like forever. Like it's not just like, oh, I want to learn Dragon Boat to show up to one race to like, put it on a plaque somewhere and move on with my life. Like I guess sprinting, like, I can do it, but it doesn't bring me the same joy as outrigger canoe does. And so as soon as I got in that boat, I'm like, all right, I'm in forever, basically. Then we started getting smaller boats in through the club, and once you learn that like you can get out on the water basically by yourself, meet up with friends, you can bring a boat for somebody else, like all of that stuff, it's just such like a freeing feeling. And then you can get together with your friends at practice all within the same Dragon Boat, so like it all goes full circle. Like, yeah, I started in the Dragon Boat, and then, I like OC6 more, and now it's like, okay, well, all of my friends are in the Dragon Boat, and this is how we can all hang out. So that's how I ended up back in it.
Yeah, a lot of Dragon Boat clubs that are high performance based are like, I like to describe it as a machine, right? Like you get people, and you're going to churn out an athlete, and you're going to get them to hit a world level result. And then after that cycle's over, you reload, right? That person might be done. They might not do it again, right? And that's one of the big things that I didn't want is like, it's not interesting to have somebody for a year and then like they turn over and that's it, right? The whole idea of the club is like you're creating lifelong interest in the sport, right? And so even if somebody gets really good in a year, but then they quit, in my eyes, that's a waste of talent, right? Because that person could have done it for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. And there's a lot of outlets to keep pursuing it that aren't so taxing on mind, body, and soul, right? And Dragon Boat inherently is like, you do this, you go to the next level, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of stress. Boom, you get done with it, and you're like, oh man, I got this gold medal. I don't know if I can do it again. And then you're done, right? And I've met dozens of athletes who go through that cycle, and again, that's the end of their career. And it's not something that I support because If only they did it another year, they'd be even better. If they did it another year, right? And so trying to get people to do this for the long term is one of the big, draws. And the whole club is orchestrated in that route where you don't want to burn out people so much, right? Even with Chattajack, there's enough of a layover where it's like, I could probably do that again. So before we get to Chattajack as an event, we'll go through and we'll talk about everybody's first Dragon Boat race, which 3 of you, it's Lake Hernando Dragon Boat Festival, but 1 of you, it's some other oddball one, and we'll get to that in a minute. So Beth, starting with, what was your first Dragon Boat Festival?
Well, I have to assume it was Lake Hernando, but that was a long time ago for me to remember. But I remember, and I still get this with every single race, that rush of adrenaline you get. They're so large compared to other types of events because so many people per boat and so many teams that enter. And of course, it's in our backyard, and so they make it a very large festival benefiting the Education Foundation. So it's very, very community oriented. And I think what I take away from it, I mean, you guys know me enough to know that I'm all about people and people potential and that type of thing. What I loved about it, that one in particular, is they have community boats, they have club level boats, and it really reveals how accessible the sport is. So, take a person like me who doesn't have an athletic background per se, that, I picked up running in my mid 40s, but besides that, office work, that type of thing, I was always at my desk like this all day. And being at that festival, I could see how broad it is, the demographic that it covers. It's not age restrictive. It's not gender restrictive. It's not size restrictive. It's not any of those kinds of things. It's just people that have a passion for being together and having fun and being brave enough to get into this tippy boat at first, like hoping they don't fall out, right? So for me, that's what I got out of that first festival. It is a ton of adrenaline. It is a ton of camaraderie. And then when you do well, it's like, holy crap, how did we do that? And it just really brings people together even more closely. So a lot of festivals since then, and every one of them, it's amazing. An entire day for 6 minutes of racing, you're exhausted at the end, but such a boost and such a good feeling from having done it.
And that's one thing that we talk about at practice is, especially when paddlers start, everybody starts in that community boat at Lake Hernando. Every single person, we can point back, that's one of their origins, right? And it's such a cool, like you said, like a feeder system and building, right? Is everybody starts in the community boat and then they progress, right? And then you look back on it, it's like, oh my God, I was in a community boat at one point, right? And it's like, that's one of the coolest things that we try to do at K2N is, again, like, we don't seek out high-level athletes, right? You're just trying to find people and the human potential. That's what piques your interest, right? How people paddle in the first week or month or 6 months is not indicative, again, of this long-term 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? And so that boat has produced so many people each year, class of 18, class of 19, class of 20, each one of those is a special story, right? About starting in that boat and then going on to do some really cool things within the sport in general. And ultimately, it's, one of the driving forces of what we're trying to do, right? If you try to recruit, it's not as meaningful as trying to build something, right? Taking people, giving them the confidence to put them in a very scary situation and be successful. You never know what that leads to in the long term. So, Colleen, I'm pretty sure Lake Hernando is your first festival, right?
No.
Oh, look at that. Okay, there's 2. I was thinking about it as Beth was talking. It's like, actually, Colleen probably started somewhere else. So, Colleen, tell us about your first festival.
My first real festival. I had only been paddling about a month, and Sarasota came up.
Oh,
and
my goodness. I forgot about that.
To Nathan
totally.
Benderson.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was totally overwhelmed and didn't know what I was doing and unprepared. And I think I wound up in a race for the equivalent of what a community boat would have been in the grand scheme of things. But you know what? Despite the fact that it was kind of a disaster, I'm one of those people, I don't only, I think everybody can thrive when they're successful. But when you have different challenges and different obstacles and you're not successful the first time out. Like for me, that lights a fire. Like, well, I'm just going to have to get better. What am I going to do to get better about? I can't be the weakest link on the team. Like I have to keep trying. And, every time for the last 2 years, every time I want to make really bad choices, like I'll do one or two, but I pull myself back and think, you know what? You got to get better at this. And even when I have a few weeks here and there, when I'm having some health issues or whatever else, I don't quit. I come back. And that's kind of what Sarasota taught me. Don't quit. Keep going. And I'm glad I did.
Sarasota was a tough. So, like, I always pride myself in giving everybody the Disney experience, right? Because if we want to try to keep it controlled and the outcome is only positive, fun, and you don't want to set people up for failure, right? And so, Sarasota, big festival, right? A lot of teams are training for Club Crew Nationals and Club Crew Worlds, and future Club Crew World medalists were in that, right? So they're fine-tuning their teams, and they have a whole bunch of teams. It's only 20 boats. The entirety of Hillsborough County is out there, and they got like 80 racers, and they're killing it, right? And then we're out there like trying to have fun, right? Like they're out there freaking bulldozing everybody. And cycling people into that race, it's tough because you have literal world level racers that are going against Colleen, who is a first timer. And so from the Disney perspective, that's not a good end result because there's no way that we're going to go out there and win, right? Lake Hernando, you're racing against people from the Walmart and, from Ace Hardware. And so the chances of success or doing well or feeling good about, your time that has gone into it is very high, right? So again, Disney experience, you do it, you're going to have a good success, you're going to feel good, and then that kind of sets the ball in motion, right? And so that was a controversial one for the Sarasota, and that one got through our approval board, and I still second guess it to this day, right? But again, you never know, like even from a negative experience necessarily, right? Having the first one, being jammed into seat 10, and this is uncomfortable, and this is high stakes, and coach is mad all day because we're getting our butts kicked, right? Like that's not conducive of lighting that fire in somebody necessarily, right? And I try to be in control of some of those X factors in, I want to make sure this person enjoys it first. And then once they enjoy it, then you can hammer them about performance and this, right? And, it's easy to snub out that fire in the first 2 weeks because you expect too much. And then it doesn't allow that to go 6 months, a year, 2 years into the future, right? And, I actually forgot about that. And that's a part of my brain I just, wiped out. I was like, all right, Gina, tell us about the Lake Hernando Dragon Boat Festival, first time you were in it.
Lake Hernando, yes, community boat. Last picked person, right? When we were training for that?
When we were doing training, we did it dodgeball, football, schoolyard style.
Yes.
And we picked person by person. It was me and...
Christina was the other captain.
Was she? Yeah.
I ended up on her team.
That's right. So we... Yeah, Gina remembers.
Can I come clean? Can I come clean?
Come clean. You didn't even want me.
No, there was a couple new people at that time, and I couldn't remember your name.
Oh, that's okay. I'll never forget it. I got picked last, but we won. I was on the winning boat that day. But I did get picked last. I told Ray I'm never going to be picked last again. And I'm not.
So bad with names, so I didn't...
We were training for we had just joined. Ray and I started in October, and that was in November.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been with the club now a year and a half, and I've gotten to do 4 dragon boats with you.
Mm-hmm.
And each time we've just gotten better, and we've won medals, and it is very exhilarating from the time we do our first practice 20, get to the start line, and we have alignment, and the horn goes off. You are pumped, and you are pumped until you cross that line, and he says, "Let it run," and you're like gasping for air because that last bit. But it's exhilarating. It brings out the kid in me. I guess that's the best thing I could say. I'm 52, and I feel like a kid again.
Yeah, so speaking of coming clean, right? So, and then Gina's not the only example of this, but it's one of my most recent ones that we can point to. But again, like I said, like you got picked last, right? And there was a time period where I'm like, man, Ray is very coordinated and picks this sport up really good. But God, his wife, she can't paddle to save her life.
So true.
Yeah, we find.
But that's one of the things, right? Like, if I had snubbed that out in the first couple of weeks and made you feel bad about it, why aren't you coordinated? Why can't you get the hang of it? It wouldn't have blossomed into what you are today, which is one of our top ladies right this second,
Absolutely.
right? And there are many examples that this is just one of the most recent ones. But even in the past, you watch somebody in that first couple of months and you're like, oh my God, like, what am I looking at? And then after a period of time, they get the hang of it. And then it's like, oh my God, I can't imagine them not getting it because they're so good now, right? And that's one of the big hurdles for a lot of people starting a group or starting a team is when you take in people that are not specialized in the skill and you're very judgmental because like I get it and I can't understand how somebody else doesn't get it. And in every sport, in every activity, in every hobby, we get that way. We get this disposition like, if I understand it, everybody should get it, right? And it's one of the things that blocks you out from building the sport, right? You get somebody and they're totally helpless. And it's up to you to give them that information. If they don't get it, it's your fault, right? And from that platform, it's always been on me. Like if Gina doesn't get it, I have to keep working hard until she does understand it. But it's easy to flip the script and be like, well, you should be the better athlete and understand it, even when you don't give people enough time, right? So Gina's a great example of a success story. First 2 months, like, no. But then 3 months, oh, she's got it. 4 months, boom, hey, you should do Chattajack, and then does it, right? So within a year from day one, less than a year later, doing 31 miles down the river competently, right? And so again, from the podcast, if you're watching, when you see somebody at Walmart, if you just give them enough time, they can be a specialized athlete as well.
You didn't give up. You don't give up. And your training, how you train and the time that you put in, Robert, it may seem repetitive to you, and sometimes it may seem like you're not getting through to us. You are, because I would go home and Ray and you would be the top of our conversation for the next 2 hours. We'd be sitting, from the time we purchased our own paddles, we'd be sitting there. My husband watches all your videos, everything. He's gone to you for training information. We've gotten private lessons with you because we love it and you never gave up and you're good at what you do.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on to that, like coming from me who I don't have like a athletic background, like I did not know how to properly throw a ball using your hips, like they said it a million times in gym class.
Right.
You have to step with your opposite leg, and my hips didn't move. I stepped, but yeah, like some of us, we just don't have that same athletic background because we weren't part of team sports. We weren't part of like something that made us figure out how to move our body in a way that like is efficient.
Right.
So I remember the first couple of times we got in a kayak together. You remember that red kayak? And I was paddling and I wasn't moving anything besides my arms. And you were like, you're splashing me with water every single stroke. Like, please put the whole blade in the water. And so I'd try and then I'd keep going back to normal. Please put the whole blade in the water and stop splashing me. So some of us, it just takes a little bit longer to figure out like how to connect our movement with the water, how to move efficiently. But that doesn't mean that just because we didn't understand or show potential the first few times that we're out there, it doesn't mean that we can't figure it out eventually.
And
So the true sign of success is now when you splash them with water,
It's on
100%
purpose.
intentional.
It's on purpose.
And you should see them two paddle now. They're like right on.
It's like, and then we'll have a montage of her splashing me. And one of the reasons that I have that empathy for it is, believe it or not, I'm not a fast learner myself, right? So I understand not understanding the sport at all. Fortunately, though, I didn't have 30 people or 40 people on a drag boat team watching me learn. I got to learn in private, right? Teaching myself, going through it, but it was very arduous, very difficult. I show videos to my friend and they'd be like, dude, what are you doing? I'm doing my best. What I'm doing, right? And so even for me, like when everybody looks at me, right, even on the YouTube channel, oh, this kid's super coordinated, he's got it. But that is thousands of hours to make that motion look fluid, right? And so I try to give that same luxury to people when they're learning, right? When you're being coached, right, it expedites it. So it's not thousands of hours. You only need dozens or hundreds, right, to really get the idea. But you have to give them that time, right? And if somebody gets it in the first hour or two, it's almost like you're not going to meet that person because they're already playing professional sports and making millions of dollars doing something else, right? And so most people that are getting into the sport as one of their second sports or one of their, later in life sports, they're not, again, athletically savvy, right? And you have to be conscious of that and that learning curve, right? And patience is part of it. I try to pride myself that I haven't ever given up on anybody. They usually give up on the idea of doing it. It gets too hard. It gets difficult. Seldom it's like an attitude thing, right? And it's tough to be coached, right? It's tough to do it for 100 hours and like, oh, it's still wrong. And it's like, you got to like fight internally on like, I want to attack this guy, right? And so like sometimes that becomes the issue is like the next step in the process is what I've been doing is wrong. And I have to make this adjustment again. And I don't want to because I've already taken 30 steps. And now this 31st step is wearing on me, right? And that's always, with getting better, having that mental space gets you to that finish line, right? So, what we're talking about?
Your dragon boat experience.
Yeah, Christina.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right. We got off track a little bit.
Well, my first experience was a little bit different. So I had started in like spring of 2019 and summer 2019. You were like, "Hey, you've been in a dragon boat a couple of times. We've got an extra seat for this Rick's on a River." And because they only had the 20-person dragon boat, it wasn't like a professional event, but it was $20 and we got a free beer at the end. Like it was right up my alley because like it was low pressure, low stakes, and we just went out there, got a couple races under our belt. It was so much fun. We had the little exhibition round where we were paddling with our hands. We won that one as a team, so that was pretty cool. And then just having lunch with the team afterwards, like just connecting with people because I hadn't been to that many practices before then. And it was a great event. I loved it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of low-key dragon boat festivals. Most of them are dominated by Pan Am, which are like big to-dos, right? And Rick's on the River used to be a summertime one. Snowbirds are gone, right? A lot of residents in Florida looking to race. $20, show up, race. And that was in an era, 2019, filling a 20 boat was difficult, right? And so that was just like everybody tried to get in. But it wasn't like Nathan Benderson Park where like you have world champions out there. It's just like whatever, right? And so it was very laid back. They had the fun exhibition at the end. The other exhibition was they raced me on a SUP that day. So they filled the 20-person boat with whoever wanted to get in it. I was on a stand-up paddleboard, and we raced the distance of my choosing, which is 100 meters.
Yeah, we didn't win, so I didn't want to talk about that.
That's right. 100 meters, 200 meters I can't win, but 100, the boat accelerates pretty quickly, right? And so some of those small events don't exist anymore. That's a good point. Like, we should have some more of those, right? Because it's a great integration to just like all clubs have new people, right? And getting them into a boat, into an event, and just having fun, right? Mm-hmm. It's $20, you show up, you get a bunch of races, right? It's a lot low stakes. If you're paying a bunch of money, and then like there's a lot of teams that are there, like it makes it a lot more difficult to integrate your new people because you want to win. So you have to kick them out to fill that seat with somebody more competent, right?
Yeah, I think there was only like 10 teams there or something like that. So it wasn't like a big to-do. They didn't have like a timer out there with the frames of each thing. Like it just was like low-key and a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And dead air.
Well, where's Rick? Where was Rick?
Oh, Rick's on the River is in Tampa, and it's actually the home that hosts Invictus, Blue Dragons, and there used to be another team there as well, Sokka and Blade Runners, and they moved into the $7 million boathouse, right? But they all used to be housed there. So when you would do the race, all of those boats are team boats, so they can line up 4 or 5 of them and actually race. So at the end, the exhibition with the hand paddling reveals that I've been doing prone paddling for a while. Because even before 2019, I had prone paddling experience. So we gather everybody around, and I was like, look, there's only one way that we can win, right? And most of the teams, they would go out there in the hand paddling. So you put your paddle under your seat, and you would paddle a dragon boat with your arm, right?
Wow.
And most teams, they would just take their hand and scoop water. No. Your paddle is your forearm. So we would actually put our whole forearm in the water, find pressure like the paddle, and then go through and sit all the way up. And it was so funny because I'm sitting there giving the game plan, and everybody, like, at first they're like, okay, he's full of crap, right? And then the realization, like, oh God, like, why does he know this, right? Like, we got 20 people here, and this is like, I'm talking about this and that, and try to use this and feel this. And they're like, how do you know how to paddle with your arms, right? And then years later, they're like, oh, there's a whole prone paddling thing you can do. And this guy happens to know how to do that too.
I thought, because that was my first race, so I thought like that was just something that happened at a lot of Dragon Boat races.
Yeah, and we've literally never done that since, right? And they used to do like some of those low-key events at the very end. They would do these skills, right? So the race that we did yesterday, they would have the rubber chicken challenge where you race 100 meters and the drummer has to drop a rubber chicken into a basket. So getting there first, that's one part of it. But if you miss the basket, you lose, right? Paddling with the paddle upside down, paddling with your hands, paddling backwards, having half the crew forward, half the crew backwards. There's all kinds of little skills and drills that they used to do in Dragon Boat that until yesterday, I forgot were even like part of the equation, right? And so Dragon Boat, it's a very accessible sport, right? You can take people that are brand new, put them in a boat. They're going to go fast from the success of everybody in the boat, right? It's a short duration to paddle. Most humans, you give them paddle, they can survive 60 seconds, right? Versus Chatterjack, here, try to paddle in 8 hours, right? Much different proposition. So you have the short distance. There's no balance demand for the most part. They get in as long as they're not moving too crazy. The wind isn't too bad. They're not going to flip over. And it's fun, right? Like the whole atmosphere of it it's engaging, it's fun, and it's one of the greatest feeder systems into the sport of paddling, right? So most people on the paddle pursuit, when they listen, they're surf ski paddlers, or OC paddlers, or maybe OC6, right? But when you look at Dragon Boat, its format kind of dictates why there's thousands of people that do it, right? Versus you look at surf ski women's racing and there's dozens, right? It's difficult, it's long distance, it's scary, it's literally life-threatening in a lot of situations. Dragon Boat, not so much. Yesterday we had a race and one of the boats flipped over. Within 15 seconds, the support boat flies over there and pulls all those people out of the water, right? So as long as you can tread water for a minute, your chances of drowning drop to zero, right? If you're in a surf ski in the middle of the lake by yourself, unattended, you got to tread water for a long time, right? And so this is one of the reasons where the sports participation drops tremendously, right? And I cannot understate how important Dragon Boat has been to K2N. Without Dragon Boat, this would not have been a successful campaign in getting people, building interest, building a love for paddling. A lot of it starts with the Dragon Boat specifically, then the outrigger canoe comes, then the surf ski comes, then the sub comes, then the prone paddle, whatever it is, right? But Dragon Boat seems to be kind of that central hub that brings in so many people. Many people stay in Dragon Boat. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But it gives them that opportunity, like, I like paddling, I like being on the water. Now I can try this very scary thing in a controlled environment, right?
So I think I could add a couple other things on from the Dragon Boat aspect of it that you didn't list. One is, where else do you have the opportunity to be able to sit in the boat? And many of us are visual learners, so you can actually witness what's going on in the seats in front. So in addition to having verbal cues, now you have visual cues of how do you hold the paddle? How do you get your catch? How do you go through the stroke? How do you do those things? And then it's also an opportunity for drilling, where else can you drill 10 or 20 people all at the same pace, at the same time, with one set of commands, and have them, again, visually learning from others while also learning from the commands that they've been given. So I think those two aspects are huge, with Dragon Boat being a feeder into the others. And I know the way you've described it to a lot of people is Dragon Boat being fairly two-dimensional, because you're one side, your stroke is certain things you're concentrating on. And then as you get into outrigger or into surf ski, you start adding a third dimension in with either switching sides or paddling both sides with a double blade. But the core foundation of dragon boat and being able to see others do it and drill then carries forward into those other types of boats so valuably. So for me, that was huge, getting that foundation that then I could carry forward into a ton of time into outrigger, and now more and more time into surf ski and making Chattajack. I never would have had any of that without the core principles that Dragon Boat brought to me.
In all the communities, there has to be some sort of foundation, right? Andre Souza, which is episode 18, I believe, he was talking about the surf community, people that go to the beach, swim in the ocean, hang out, and that's that foundation. Oh, now I can go in the ocean in a kayak or in a canoe, and so on, and it elaborates from there, right? So from a flat water perspective, you have, again, whatever the foundation is makes it accessible for a large group of people to make that plunge. Because you do have to understand, again, just like with paddle technique, it is difficult, and it is arduous, and it is complicated, it is difficult, and it is very intimidating. So is being in a boat by yourself. And so is the balance demand of that. And so is the proposition of flipping and swimming and getting back in it. All these are super scary things. And a person doing that by themselves, it exists. Again, many people that get into the sport do it by themselves. They just wake up and they're like, I'm going to buy an outrigger canoe and I'm going to go flip it 1,000 times and get into it. But the majority of humans are not interested in doing that, right? Unless it's controlled, unless it's measured, right? Unless it's in an environment in their favor. The Disney experience helps, right? If you can make sure that they're going to have a positive outcome at the end of all of this work, people are more likely to stick with it. They have a negative experience, they may stop right there, and that's the end of the journey, right? And so that's, again, what we're trying to do in the club setting. But don't underestimate Dragon Boat. I know in 2024, that's not a controversial take, but in 2018, that was a very controversial take. Hey, outrigger people, these dragon boaters, they're coming. Oh, they don't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. It's so stupid. And now today, it's integrated. Most OC racers are steadfast dragon boat racers, right? And so that simplicity is no longer frowned upon, but it's like, oh, this is a real thing that we can build on and try to make. If that community of dragon boat grows, outrigger, OC6 is going to grow, and OC1 is going to grow. And it's like a pyramid that you're working up. But the bigger that paddling foundation is, everybody can build on, right? And that's one of the things that we're trying to bring together is they're not separate communities. We're all one giant community together, right? So, Colleen, tell us about getting an outrigger canoe for yourself. What was your first experience in the outrigger canoe? Because I also don't remember that.
So the very first one was when K2N had I believe it was a regatta, and Rebecca did the short course, and she came back in, and I was out there with Sabrina helping to time. And she said, oh, do you want to try my boat? I said, really? You would let me try your boat? I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, no, it's okay. Take it right around, So I did. And I'm like, wow, I think I really like this too. I'm going to have to get one. And it took a while. I didn't buy it till right before last Christmas. But there's something about it. Like, it's so different from the team sport, the dragon boat or the OC6. But they're so complementary. And it's a little weird, but it's really helped me tame the competitive part of my brain. Because if I'm in boats, like when we did the Silver River race, I want to win. I don't want to be second. And, if there are boats out there, I want to. And with the OC1, I really have to recognize my limitations and my talent or lack of talent and make peace with that. And I don't need to be the fastest or the strongest or get on a podium. I can love it for what it is, and I can try to be better than the paddler I was yesterday. And it's getting to be enough for me. I'm making peace with that. Because at a certain point in time, I'm over 60. I don't need to be duking it out. I can relax and enjoy the sport. Dragon boat's competitive. That's fun. If I'm signed up for Chattajack, but my goal is to finish and to be able to say I did it. And I don't need to be on the podium or to try to beat Gina or, anything like that. And it's really kind of helped me make peace with a different side of myself from my past.
Yeah, and the fun part about paddling is it's an outlet that you can do whatever you want with it, right? And so whether you want to be, I'm the type A personality where like, I want to be champion of the universe, right? But, enjoying it for what it is has extraordinary effects on, again, people's lives, right? Building confidence is like when you have a skill that you're good at, that is kind of the foundation for that, right? And so you give that to a lot of people. Like, hey, you're good at this specialized thing. You're able to go on the water in this really tippy thing and go fast or whatever, right? And you're good at it. And it's one of those things like innately where when people are confident, they're good at something, right? And you give that to, people. So Colleen mentioned the Silver River race. So imagine, so we're in an OC2 together. And what that really is like, I'm on a chariot whipping a horse. And that horse is Colleen, right? It's like, come on, Colleen, we can do it.
You're
right?
laughing and taking pictures and waving at people, and I'm scared to miss the stroke.
Yep. That was a race where, like, there was, social parts of like, man, I would like to win, so we're going to try. Cracking the whip, right? And there's a lot of races where that is not present, where it's just like, like you said, like Chattajack, we're just going to finish, right? That one, cracking the whip. And we did well. We literally won, right? And one of the reasons I like looking at Chattajack in general is they have an 8-hour cutoff, right? And especially in an outrigger canoe, the proposition of making it down that river in an OC1, the skill level on it is not very high, right? And that's what makes it so cool is if you're not going to podium, there's somewhere between that finish in 5 hours and somewhere in 8 hours. And just doing it is an extraordinary feeling, right? It's like when people run their first marathon. This is our paddling equivalent to that. And not even just like a local marathon, like literally the Boston Marathon. You're going to meet and see hundreds of racers, right? They're all lined up. It's this crazy big event. And going down that river is a really cool experience, right? The race sold out in 10 minutes this year, right? So, I mean, there's people that really want to do, again, this experience. And so, pivoting from the Chattajack, Gina, tell us about your first Chattajack. And so, Gina gets off the water. I'm going to jump ahead. So, she gets off the water, and again, type 1 diabetic. And like I'm like, hey, I'll get all your stuff, and it's like, dude, she's got all this candy and stuff. What is that? Like, these are like M&Ms. Like, are there's
Skittles?
There's a couple left in here. I'm gonna eat them. So tell us about your first Chattajack.
Oh, whoa! Best thing ever, finishing. And when you finished, I think my husband and I did it in just over 5 hours, and he OC2'd with me. And when you see that marina, which seems like it's right there, but it's still miles away. Finally, when you get to make the curve around that marina and you've got people with cowbells and cheering you on, and I had a couple of K2N members there cheering us, we crossed that line and we deflated, but we didn't deflate. We were like, we did it, we did it, we did it. We couldn't say. Now, getting off the boat was a different story because they take you around and then you have to get off on these mats. Literally, our legs were numb. So we crawled off in an army man style, and I crashed. My sugar went, and paramedics, they were immediately checking my sugar, giving me juice. Robert, so are you all right? My husband, everybody. But what an experience. We bought our boat in February, started a training regiment with Robert, and my husband, when he first signed up, he thought, I'm going to do it by myself. And then I said, no, we're doing it together. I'm not going to let you do it by yourself. And that's why I jumped on board with him. So with Robert's help in the club, in less than 6 months, we started training and pushing. But you're right, it wasn't Ray and I weren't there for the podium. I was there for a personal reason to finish it and say I could do it. And we're going back. This will be year number 2 with more people from K2N, which is like so cool. My first race was at Chris Park with Robert. Talking about scared, I was scared because I didn't want to race. My husband signed me up to race. Oh, you're racing with Robert. What? You know?
Did he whip you?
Oh, let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
I'll never forget. Whatever you do, do not stop paddling. So the whole time I'm dying, foaming at the mouth, and I'm not stopping paddling. And we were supposed to do 6 miles, but it ended up because we went longer.
It was 7.5. Yeah.
And we were at a neck and neck with 2 renowned women.
Yep. Yeah. So we have 2 nearly national champion level ladies, and we're coming to the finish, and we're literally neck and neck with them. And it's like Gina's fading, right? And it's like, I'm like, Gina, I need you. So like, and I'm lying to her the whole way. It's like, she's like, how far are we? And I'm like, 5 miles. And I look down, it's like 6.5. I'm like, it's only 1 more mile. You're done great. And so getting into that situation, again, the Disney experience kind of dissolves, right? Because it's like, man, if we can win, it's such a great feeling, right? And that's what I'm chasing, right? Like, I don't care about winning for myself, but if this person that's in seat 1, if I can push them into that moment, it's something they're going to remember forever, right?
And it did. He did that.
And Colleen and Gina both, right? Like,
he did that.
And it's like, it's double or nothing, because if we don't, then it's like, oh my God, I let him down, I let myself down, right? But it's like, if we just push, we can get that good feeling, right?
And you changed lives because of that. I think there's been many people that's come in and out of your life that they can't not talk about a Robert experience and having experienced that with you. I was proud, so proud. You know, my husband was on a sup, so he came in much later. And you're like, dude, we took first. And I'm like, he goes, you took first. I'm like,
Gina's on the land, and I'm like, do we have to call 911?
I know.
Is she about to die?
But it changed me, you know, that to me, the camaraderie of the paddling community and what people, it doesn't matter what race you go to, people are friendly to you. They talk to you. They'll give you advice. How many people know you? Every race I've gone to, tons of people come out, Robert, asking, can you fix my rudder? Can you do this? Can you give me a tip? That's, to me, what it's all about.
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
And it's the community at large is very good at cultivating new people. Like, you identify this as a person's first race, or they've only been around for a little while, and because it's very tight-knit, and everybody's good about doing like their due diligence on making sure this person doesn't blow up, because if they have a bad experience, it might not come back, right? And trying to make sure that people enjoy it is, it's not just me doing it, right? Like, everybody, right? So that's why I feel so comfortable with these Florida Competition Paddler Association races. Bringing new people is because even if I'm not with this person, they're going to have a good experience. They're going to talk to so-and-so. They've been doing it 55 years. They're super chill. Like, everything about it is very endearing. So, Christina, tell us about your first FCPA race here in Florida.
That was Silver Lake. Yeah, Silver Lake. So that one is an interesting one because we started at the state park, which we don't do anymore because of like legal reasons or whatever. But we started at the lake, and then you go to a sign that says Hog Island. And you turn around and you come back. And I was in a surf ski, and it was that Futura was the first one that I had. And leading up to that, like, it didn't seem like it wanted to work for me because the rudder kept doing something weird, and then you would fix it, and then it would do something else weird and break somewhere else. So I didn't even get like a 3-mile run in until like the week of the race. That was the longest I had been in the surf ski, was for 3 miles. So I go to the race. It was like 5 miles, so like not a super long race. I had to like stop, twice because like I couldn't feel my hands anymore. I'm like gripping onto the paddle so tight. And but yeah, it was like I finished it. It was fun. We had all of our team there, like just everybody's all excited about like, oh, we finished our first race, because it wasn't just my first race, it was a couple other people's first race as well. And then the best part about those races where there weren't like a ton of people was like going for lunch afterwards and just being able to talk to everybody like, oh, what do you like to paddle? Where do you like to paddle? Like, what races have you done? What do you recommend? Like, all of that stuff. Like, the connecting afterwards was more lasting than the actual like race and race location. I just knew like, I can do this again. Like, I didn't die on my first attempt, so let me try to do it again.
That's always good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Christina's class of 2019, we had 5 or 6 people. That was their first race, right?
Wow.
We were like Dave, Amanda, I think Brad. I think that was one
Yeah,
of his
Brad
first,
did that one.
Yeah, that was one of his first races in small boats. And each year and each group of people that you have, everybody has different dispositions, right? And that's one of the main things is you might meet somebody that's gung-ho, right? And 2019, we had a lot of gung-ho people. We're like, hey, I'll get in this boat by myself and paddle in some swamp, like whatever, right? And then like you'll meet another person and they're like, a swamp, kind of scary, right? And that person needs a little bit more time. Like people will ultimately do this if you build their confidence towards it, but everybody's on a different timeline. Some people are on a 1-month timeline. Some people are on like a 3-year timeline, right? And so again, like Gina was saying, like if you give up on people, you don't see out that potential. But if you just keep working on people, you'd be surprised on the outcome that you get if you can build on that, right? Build their confidence. They'll do all kinds of crazy things. The only thing missing is the disposition to do it, right? Like I want to do it. How do you get there? I'm good at what I'm doing. Now I want to do it, right? And so that's one of the great things about K2N is, starting people out, not knowing where they're going to end up, right? And watching that progress out. As Colleen said, some of our racers, they get very good. They discover small boats, and we don't see them again, right? But it's still a beautiful feeling because they're out there enjoying the water all the time, right? And so it's great to know that the sport is continuing and it's being perpetuated. Even if it's not with us, right, being the first step in that process brings me a lot of joy, right? And so with the club, I'm always thinking about reloading. How do we get new people? How do we develop them? How do we get them going? And it doesn't interest me so much in recruiting, right? Like if we bring in a finished product to get a good race result, I don't care about that. I like the process of building somebody who's like, what is a canoe and how do I paddle it, and get them to that next step of race performance and get them to the final step of winning races, right? That progression is the thing that interests me, right? If it was a popularity contest, like Gina said, I'm good at that. I could just call up people and like, hey man, let's fill this OC6, let's fill this dragon boat, and let's go win, right? But it's never been anything that I've ever cared about because it's like winning isn't the end goal. It's about giving that experience to people, building their confidence, giving them that skill set. And so when I started the club, right, if you teach people how to do it, you'll have people to paddle with, right? And that's been one of the ultimate goals. And for me, if I can, like, I've enjoyed paddling so much. If I can bottle up these feelings that I have gotten from it and give it to different people, then, on my tombstone, we can write whatever we want on there and I'll be happy about it, right? And, giving that skill forward, it perpetuates the sport and it makes it more meaningful overall. So we've reached about an hour. So what we'll do, we'll go over an hour. It's no big deal. We're not crunched for time. We'll go across the table. And if you guys have any final thoughts, things that you want to talk about the club or mention to 4,000 people on YouTube.
Now you tell us.
But only like 400 or 500 will listen. So you don't have to worry about that. So any final thoughts that you want to add to the community at large? We're talking about the club here. We'll start with Beth.
I think for me, it's just as simple as the paddling environment and the paddling community. It brings a longevity to it that I am looking forward to. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of sports that people participate in that a few years out, they may not be able to do it. For me, I'm looking at a sport where I feel like I can easily continue to do it for another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Mm-hmm. It may be different craft. It may be with different people. It may be in different kinds of locations. Maybe flat water's all I want to do eventually, that type of thing. But it just has such a potential for how long I can stay in it and do it safely and do it enjoyably. So I think that's my biggest part of it, is that ability to be one with the outdoors and the mental and physical well-being that it brings to me. So I would just encourage people, as Gina said earlier, if there are clubs in your area, or if you happen to be visiting in Citrus County, come paddle with us. We love it when we have people that are out there with us. We are always open arms. It doesn't matter who it is or whether you've done it or not. It's just we love to have people come and have the same experience that we have.
All right, Colleen, give us some last thoughts.
So, to add on to what Beth spoke of, I think if you want to try it, you've heard about it, and you think, I don't know, go ahead and do it, because you may find a lifelong fun pursuit that's healthy and, very satisfying. And don't discount people on the basis of, I didn't paddle till I was 60. I had maybe been in a sea kayak once or twice 30 years ago, but if you're older and you think, hey, that looks like fun, or I might want to try that, you might surprise yourself and you might really enjoy it, especially if you're not concerned about being on a podium or competing, and you just want a fun hobby, because you're never really too old to try something new, and you're never too old or too young to be a good coach and role model, and you may get lucky wherever you live to find somebody like Robert that inspires that community, because that's really made a difference, I think, in our group and K2N. Because it would have been really easy when I just couldn't get the right stroke to be like, okay, maybe you're just not cut out for this. Yeah. 2 years later, I'm not as good as I could be, but I'm not as bad as I once was. And I love it. So there's that. Go ahead and try it if you're even thinking that in that direction.
Gina.
Paddling, it's diverse. And it's what you want it to be, or what you can make it. The diversity of the challenges that you can do, like she said, no podium, chasing a podium, to the bodies of water. We talked about this in a race Christina and I did last weekend. We primarily practice on flat water. We have windy days, but the challenge of having waves, a Gulf paddle, I've never done that until last weekend. And what an experience. We hoolied twice. Thank God our coach taught us how to properly get back in a boat, which I'm still learning that. But you can make it what you want to make it. I have taken it, I have fun, and I've got a fire lit in me that I want to do more. I want to learn more. I want to compete. I want to compete with different people. And really, Robert, I think between you and my husband, you guys brought that out in me. And I didn't know it was there. So if anybody out there ever doubts themselves, or they're sitting on the couch, they're wasting away like I was, go try something. There's something for everybody, but I really tell you, there is something about the water.
So there's with Gina talking about the Gulf of Mexico. There's a common theme that has arisen, and it's that I lie to Gina. I lied to her about these conditions, right? Oh, we're at mile 5 and we're at like 6.5, right? She asked me on Wednesday, hey, what's the race going to be like on Saturday? Oh, you don't have to worry about it. And I already knew it was going to be windy Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and that ocean was going to be alive. But I was like, I'm not going to tell her. She's just going to find out, right? And so, everybody's different, and apparently me and Gina are on the wavelength where I can just, withhold information and just let her find out.
I'm gullible.
And she'll come out clean on the other side.
She was with somebody who would keep her safe.
Yes, thank
That's
God.
what it was. I was like, oh, she's with Christina. I don't have to worry anymore.
I was proud of us, though.
Yeah, we got back in.
Heck
We
yeah.
finished.
And people passed us. We hoolied. People passed us. We passed them. We hoolied a second time. They passed us again. we passed them and beat them.
You go, girl.
We were ready.
Yeah.
All right, Christina, any final thoughts?
I think one of the fun parts about paddling is the community that, you know, you can be a part of. And like part of this podcast is like realizing that there are people that you can connect with. And like if you run into people at races, like some of these bigger races, you meet people that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to meet in person.
Yeah.
So like I think that's just such a fun opportunity to connect with people because we all have this thing in common. We all enjoy being out on the water. We all love the exercise, everything about it basically. And so connecting with people at races is fun. Connecting with people online is fun. If Robert's your coach because you're on the paddle school, like I get updates all the time from him like, oh my goodness, look at this person just got their PR, and it's like some person that like neither of us have ever met in real life, but he's so invested, and you've got somebody out there that you can connect with that, is invested in you if you are feeling nervous about a race or whatever. Like there's so many people out there rooting for you because you're just part of our community. We want everybody to be out there having fun, being successful. Nobody wants other people to be out there having bad races or not a good time. So like, the more you can connect with people, ask for advice, if you just need somebody to pump you up and you see like some of us in a race and you're just like, I'm nervous, like, well, hold your hand, like it's all good. But yeah, I think like just connecting with people is the like greatest part about paddling for a lot of us.
That's very well said. So that concludes the paddle pursuit. So our viewers, if you want to see more of the K2N family, guess what? There's 30 more of them if you want to watch 3 at a time here, I think is the maximum for our table. But this is an episode that we can definitely elaborate on if people are interested in seeing our community here in Hernando. And, if you have a community out there and you want to spotlight it, come down to Hernando. We'll bring you into the $10 billion studio and we'll podcast and interview you as well. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to come over and do the show. And I paid each of them handsomely to say nice things about me. Awesome. So that concludes the paddle pursuit. We'll see you all next Monday for the next episode. Thanks, Robert.
Oh, that was fun.
We did it.
That was
I
awesome.
can't believe it. We did it.
That would be such a good thing for you to get all different members to do this.